I sat frozen at my sister's Christmas table, her words still echoing in my ears like shattered glass. At least my kids have a real father. The room had gone silent except for the crackling fireplace and my nephew's electronic toy beeping in the corner. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward me, waiting to see if I would crumble the way I always did. My daughter Lily's small hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight, and something inside me shifted. This wasn't going to be another holiday where I swallowed my pain and pretended everything was fine. Not this time. Because tucked inside my purse was an envelope that would change everything, and my lawyer was waiting in the driveway, ready to walk through that door on my signal. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Claire Donovan, and I'm 34 years old, though my sister Vanessa has always made me feel decades older with her constant reminders of my failures. We grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a household where appearances mattered more than truth, where my mother's bridge club opinions carried more weight than her daughter's happiness. Vanessa, 2 years younger than me, had always been the favored one. She married young to Derek Hastings, a corporate attorney from one of Portland's old money families, the kind of match that made my mother practically glow with pride at every country club luncheon. They had 3 children in rapid succession, each one more perfectly styled than the last for the endless stream of family photos that decorated my parents' home. Vanessa's life looked like a magazine spread, all matching outfits and professional portraits, her house in the West Hills neighborhood a testament to everything my mother believed a successful life should be. Meanwhile, I had committed the unforgivable sin of marrying for love rather than status, and then compounded it by having that marriage fall apart. I met James Rourke when I was 25, working as a nurse at Providence Hospital. He was a firefighter, came in with his crew after a warehouse blaze, and something about his easy laugh and genuine kindness drew me in. My family's reaction to our engagement was tepid at best. My mother kept asking when I was going to meet someone with prospects, as if saving lives wasn't prospect enough. My father barely acknowledged James at family dinners, and Vanessa made snide comments about how romantic it must be to date someone so rugged and simple. We married anyway, in a small ceremony that my mother complained about for years afterward. Too casual, she'd say. Nothing like Vanessa's wedding at the Arlington Club with 300 guests and a 12-piece orchestra. James and I didn't care. We were happy in our modest bungalow in the Selwood neighborhood, happy with our simple life, and ecstatic when Lily was born 3 years into our marriage. For a while, everything felt perfect despite my family's disapproval. James was an incredible father, the kind who never missed a bedtime story, who learned to braid hair from YouTube videos, who coached Lily's soccer team even though he barely understood the rules. He adored our daughter with a fierce tenderness that made my heart ache with gratitude. We weren't wealthy like Vanessa and Derek, but we were building something real. Then came the accident. James was responding to a 4-alarm fire at a downtown apartment complex. The building's structural integrity had been compromised, and when he went in to search for remaining residents, a floor collapsed. He managed to save 2 people before the debris fell, but the injuries he sustained changed everything. Traumatic brain injury, the doctors said. Permanent cognitive impairment. He spent 6 months in rehabilitation, learning to speak clearly again, to control his emotions, to manage the seizures that came without warning. The James who came home was still my husband, still Lily's father, but he was different. He couldn't return to firefighting. The cognitive challenges made it difficult for him to hold steady employment. He struggled with mood swings and memory lapses. Some days were good, almost normal. Other days were hard, marked by frustration and confusion that broke my heart. Through it all, I loved him. Lily loved him. We adapted, we managed, we created a new normal. But the pressure from my family was relentless. My mother would call with articles about divorce support groups, suggesting that I shouldn't throw my life away on someone who couldn't provide for us. My father offered to pay for a lawyer if I wanted to quietly end things and move on. Vanessa was the worst, though. She took every opportunity to highlight the contrast between her perfect family and my struggling one, always with that sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. At last year's Christmas, Vanessa had made a comment about how hard it must be for Lily to have a father who wasn't really present. At Easter, she'd wondered aloud whether I'd considered what kind of male role model Lily was getting. At Thanksgiving, she'd suggested that perhaps it would be kinder to everyone involved if I acknowledged that my marriage hadn't worked out the way I'd hoped. Each comment was delivered with such practiced concern that calling her out made me look defensive and ungrateful. The truth was, James and I had been struggling. Not because I didn't love him, but because the weight of everything had created cracks in our foundation. He felt guilty about not being able to contribute financially the way he once had. I felt exhausted from carrying the burden of being the sole breadwinner while also managing his care needs and Lily's childhood. We'd been going to counseling, trying to work through it, but the stress was enormous. 3 months ago, everything came to a head. We'd had a terrible fight about money, about his medication, about 1,000 small things that had accumulated into one massive argument. He'd left to stay with his brother for a while, to give us both space to think. Vanessa heard about the separation through the family grapevine and immediately went into overdrive with her concerned sister routine, calling daily to check on me, offering advice I never asked for, telling me how brave I was for finally facing reality. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of my family knew, was that James and I had reconciled. After 2 weeks apart, we'd had the most honest conversation of our marriage. We'd acknowledged the challenges, yes, but we'd also remembered why we fell in love, why we chose each other, why our family mattered more than my mother's country club opinions or Vanessa's perfect family facade. We'd renewed our commitment to each other, to our marriage, to building a life that worked for us even if it didn't look like anyone else's definition of success. James had started working with a vocational rehabilitation counselor and found a position doing administrative work for a nonprofit that supported first responders. It wasn't firefighting, but it gave him purpose and a steady paycheck. I'd cut back my hours at the hospital to part-time and started teaching nursing courses at the community college, which paid better and gave me more time at home. We'd found a rhythm that worked for our family, a balance that honored both our needs and limitations. We decided not to announce our reconciliation to my family right away. Part of it was wanting to make sure we were on solid ground before inviting their opinions back into our lives. But honestly, another part of it was pure spite. I was tired of their judgments, tired of defending my choices, tired of watching Vanessa preen about her perfect life while subtly undermining mine. If they wanted to assume my marriage was over, let them assume. The truth would reveal itself in time. Then came the invitation to Vanessa's annual Christmas dinner. These events were always elaborate affairs, catered meals and designer decorations, everything coordinated down to the napkin rings. Attendance was mandatory in my mother's eyes, a family tradition that couldn't be broken. I'd considered declining, but Lily loved seeing her cousins, and I'd foolishly hoped that maybe this year would be different, that maybe the holidays would bring out some genuine warmth in my family. I should have known better. The evening started pleasantly enough. Vanessa's home in the West Hills was decorated like something from a luxury magazine, white lights and silver ornaments, a massive tree in the 2-story foyer, evergreen garlands draped over every surface. Her children, Natalie, Brandon, and Sophie, were dressed in matching outfits, red velvet for the girls and a tiny suit for Brandon. They greeted guests with rehearsed politeness, perfect little products of Vanessa's obsessive image management. Lily wore her favorite dress, a green one with sparkles that she'd picked out herself. It wasn't designer, and it didn't match anyone else's outfit, but she felt beautiful in it, and that was all that mattered to me. Vanessa's eyes had swept over Lily with barely concealed disdain when we arrived, but she'd smiled and complimented the dress in that tone that somehow made praise sound like criticism. My parents arrived shortly after us. My mother, Patricia, was wearing what she called her holiday pearls, a strand that had been in the family for generations and that she never failed to mention were appraised at $30,000. My father, Robert, looked distinguished in his cashmere blazer, every inch the retired bank executive. They greeted Vanessa's family warmly, fussed over the grandchildren, and gave me the obligatory hug that felt more like a social requirement than genuine affection. The other guests included Derek's parents, the Hastings family pillars of Portland society, along with various aunts, uncles, and cousins from both sides. It was the kind of gathering where conversations revolved around vacation homes and stock portfolios, where people dropped names of restaurants and resorts like currency. I'd never fit into this world, had never wanted to, but I'd learned to navigate it for Lily's sake. Dinner was served in Vanessa's formal dining room, a space that could comfortably seat 24 around a table that probably cost more than my annual salary. The meal was catered by one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants, course after course of beautifully plated food that tasted as expensive as it looked. I sat between my cousin Jennifer and my Uncle Paul, making small talk about the weather and the traffic, anything to avoid deeper conversation. Lily was at the children's table in the adjoining sunroom, laughing with her cousins over some joke I couldn't hear. Watching her happy face made all the discomfort worth it. She deserved to have family connections, to know her cousins, to experience these traditions even if I found them hollow. The trouble started during dessert, an elaborate display of individual chocolate torts with gold leaf and raspberry coulis. Vanessa had been drinking wine steadily throughout the meal, her cheeks flushed and her laugh a little too loud. She'd been holding court at her end of the table, telling stories about Brandon's acceptance into an exclusive private kindergarten and Sophie's dance recital performance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Then someone asked me how I was doing, a well-meaning question from my Aunt Carol who probably genuinely cared. Before I could answer, Vanessa interjected. "Oh, Claire's doing wonderfully. So strong, raising Lily essentially on her own. I don't know how you do it." The false sympathy in her voice made my jaw clench, but I forced a smile. "I'm not on my own. James and I are working together to raise our daughter." Vanessa's eyebrow raised, and I saw the malicious glint in her eye that I'd come to recognize over the years. "Working together? Is that what we're calling it now?" I thought he'd moved out. My mother shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in her dessert. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. The table had gone quiet, everyone pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. He stayed with his brother for a couple weeks while we worked through some things. "We're fine now." I kept my voice steady, refusing to give her the reaction she wanted. Vanessa laughed, the sound sharp and unkind. "Claire, honey, you don't have to pretend with family. We all know what's really happening. It's okay to admit when something isn't working. There's no shame in acknowledging that you made a mistake." I took a slow breath, feeling the anger build in my chest. I didn't make a mistake. James is my husband, and we're committed to our marriage and our family. A mistake would be giving up on someone I love because things got difficult. Vanessa's smile turned cruel. "How noble of you. But let's be honest about what you're really doing. You're clinging to a marriage that ended the day of that accident. James isn't the man you married anymore. Everyone can see it except you." The words hit like physical blows, but I held my ground. He's exactly the man I married. He's kind, loving, devoted to our daughter. The fact that he has challenges doesn't change who he is. Derek, Vanessa's husband, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. My mother was studying her napkin. My father had turned to talk to Uncle Paul, pretending the conversation wasn't happening. No one was going to defend me. They never did. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine. "You know what I think? I think you stay because you're afraid of being alone. You're afraid of admitting failure. But you're not doing Lily any favors by keeping her in this situation. She deserves stability, a real family structure." Her words were carefully chosen, designed to sound reasonable while being utterly devastating. Other people around the table were nodding slightly, as if she were making valid points rather than eviscerating my life choices at a holiday dinner. My hands were trembling. I set down my fork before I could throw it. Lily has stability. She has 2 parents who love her. She has a home filled with genuine affection, not just expensive furniture and coordinated outfits. That's more real than anything you've created here. Vanessa's face flushed darker. "Don't you dare judge my family. At least my children have a father who can actually parent them, who can provide for them, who doesn't need his wife to manage every aspect of his existence. At least my kids have a real father." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the children's laughter from the sunroom seemed to stop. I felt Lily's presence before I saw her, realized she'd come back into the dining room and heard at least part of Vanessa's venomous declaration. Her small hand slipped into mine under the table, squeezing tight, and I saw the tears pooling in her 7-year-old eyes. Something crystallized in that moment. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about my daughter, about what I was teaching her by allowing my family to treat us this way, about the example I was setting for how she should allow herself to be treated in the future. I'd spent years trying to maintain peace, trying to be the bigger person, trying to prove to my family that my choices were valid. But in doing so, I'd allowed them to hurt not just me, but my child. I'd had enough. I pulled my phone from my purse and typed a single word to the contact I'd saved as simply attorney. Now. Then I looked at Vanessa across the table, my sister who had spent our entire lives making me feel less than, who had weaponized her perfect facade to diminish my genuine happiness, who had just attacked my husband and hurt my daughter. Actually, Vanessa, I said quietly, I think we should talk about real fathers and real families. Let's talk about Derek and what kind of example he's been setting for your children. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Just then, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. That would be my lawyer. Let me get that. I stood from my seat with deliberate calm, feeling every eye in that dining room follow me as I walked toward the foyer. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands had stopped shaking. The fury that had been building for years had crystallized into something cold and focused. Behind me, I could hear confused murmuring, my mother's anxious voice asking what was happening, Derek's sharp question to Vanessa about what I might mean. Through the frosted glass of Vanessa's ornate front door, I could see the silhouette of Margaret Chen, the attorney I'd been working with for the past 6 weeks. She stood on the porch in her wool coat and leather briefcase, exactly as professional and unflappable as she'd been during every meeting in her downtown office. I opened the door and she stepped inside, snowflakes dusting her dark hair. Claire, she said quietly, offering me a small nod of solidarity. Are you ready for this? I nodded, unable to trust my voice just yet. Margaret had warned me about this moment, about how confrontation would feel, about the adrenaline and the fear and the exhilaration all mixed together. She'd prepared me for the reactions I might face, but she'd also reminded me that the truth was powerful, that documentation was indisputable, that I had every right to stand up for myself and my family. We walked back toward the dining room together. The conversations had stopped entirely now. Everyone was staring at us, at this stranger in their midst, trying to understand what was unfolding. Vanessa's face had gone pale beneath her expertly applied makeup. Derek had risen from his seat, his attorney instincts clearly telling him that something legally significant was about to occur. Margaret set her briefcase on the sideboard and opened it with practiced efficiency. She pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents, and held it against her chest as she surveyed the room. Good evening, she said in that calm, authoritative voice that I'd come to appreciate. My name is Margaret Chen, and I'm Claire Donovan's attorney. I apologize for interrupting your holiday gathering, but my client felt it was important that certain information be shared with the family, particularly given the accusations that have been made tonight against her husband. My mother looked like she might faint. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Vanessa was gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had gone white. Derek remained standing, his expression carefully neutral in that way lawyers have when they're trying to assess a situation before committing to a response. What is this, Claire? My father demanded. What kind of spectacle are you creating? This isn't a spectacle, Dad. This is me finally standing up for myself and my family. This is me refusing to let Vanessa's lies and cruelty go unchallenged. This is me showing everyone here exactly what kind of real father Derek Hastings actually is. Derek's careful neutrality cracked just slightly. I have no idea what you're implying, but I'd suggest you be very careful about making accusations you can't support. Oh, I can support them, I said, and Margaret handed me the folder. 6 weeks ago, I received an interesting phone call from a woman named Amanda Richardson. She was crying, apologetic, and deeply conflicted about whether to tell me what she knew. But her conscience wouldn't let her stay silent anymore. Vanessa made a small sound in her throat. Derek's jaw clenched. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew, whether he could still control the narrative. Amanda told me that she'd been having an affair with Derek for the past 2 years. She said it started at a legal conference in Seattle, continued through regular meetings at a hotel downtown, and had recently ended because Derek told her he couldn't leave his wife despite all his promises. She said she was tired of being a secret, tired of the lies, and she thought I should know what kind of man my sister was married to before Vanessa threw any more stones at my marriage. The explosion of voices was immediate. My mother crying out in denial, my father demanding proof, various relatives gasping and exclaiming. But I kept my eyes on Vanessa, watching as the reality crashed over her like a wave. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at Derek with an expression I'd never seen on her face before, all the polished confidence stripped away to reveal raw betrayal underneath. Derek was shaking his head. This is ridiculous. Some scorned woman calls you with lies and you believe her? You show up at Christmas with a lawyer over unfounded accusations? Margaret stepped forward smoothly. Actually, Mr. Hastings, the accusations are quite well-founded. My investigator has been documenting your activities for the past 5 weeks. We have hotel records showing regular bookings under your name and credit card. We have photographs of you entering and leaving Amanda Richardson's apartment on at least 8 occasions. We have text messages, recovered through legal discovery methods, that make the nature of your relationship abundantly clear. She pulled several photographs from the folder and laid them on the dining table. They showed Derek entering a downtown apartment building, Derek and a blonde woman embracing in a parking garage, Derek and the same woman having coffee at a cafe with their hands intertwined across the table. The timestamps on each photo were clearly visible. We also have financial records showing payments to Ms. Richardson totaling approximately $40,000 over the course of the relationship. Gifts, rent assistance, and various expenses that you concealed from your wife using a credit card account she didn't know existed. Margaret's voice remained professional, clinical, as she laid out the evidence like items on an operating table. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The perfect hostess composure had shattered completely. She looked at Derek with eyes full of tears and fury. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me right now that this is some kind of mistake. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The attorney in him was probably screaming not to say anything that could be used against him. But the husband, caught in front of his entire family, seemed incapable of crafting a defense. Vanessa, he started, his voice rough. It's complicated. It was the worst possible thing he could have said. Vanessa let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Complicated? You cheated on me for 2 years and spent our money on another woman and it's complicated? She whirled toward me, and for a moment I thought she might attack me physically. You did this. You brought this here to ruin my life, to destroy my family out of jealousy. No, I said quietly. Derek did this. Derek ruined your family when he decided to betray his vows. I just decided you needed to know the truth before you made any more comments about real fathers and real marriages. My mother was weeping into a cloth napkin, her holiday pearls rising and falling with her shuddering breaths. My father looked stunned, unable to process what was happening to his perfect younger daughter's perfect life. The other dinner guests were frozen in various states of shock and discomfort, probably wishing they were anywhere else but trapped in this family implosion. Margaret pulled out another set of documents. Mrs. Hastings, I have preliminary divorce papers here that Claire has prepared on your behalf, should you choose to use them. Obviously, you'll want to retain your own counsel, but we've done the initial groundwork outlining the adultery, the financial deception, and a proposed custody arrangement that prioritizes your children's well-being. Vanessa took the papers with trembling hands, staring at them as if they were written in a foreign language. Why would you do this for me? She asked, her voice broken. After everything I've said to you, after how I've treated you, why would you help me? Because despite everything, you're still my sister, I said. And because those 3 children in the next room deserve better than to grow up thinking this is what marriage looks like. They deserve better than to learn their father's values from his example. They deserve a mother who knows her worth and doesn't accept betrayal. I stepped closer to her, close enough to speak quietly so only she could hear. And because I'm tired of you using your fake perfect life as a weapon against mine. I'm tired of watching you preen and judge while your husband makes a fool of you behind your back. I'm tired of my daughter hearing you say cruel things about her father when your children's father is a liar and a cheat. So yes, I found out the truth, and yes, I'm handing it to you. What you do with it is your choice. Vanessa looked at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face, mascara starting to run in dark rivulets. Then she turned back to Derek. Get out. Her voice was steel beneath the tears. Get out of my house right now. Derek's composure finally cracked. Vanessa, we need to talk about this privately. We can work through this. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. You heard the lawyer. 2 years. $40,000. How many lies, Derek? How many times did you come home from seeing her and kiss me, kiss our children, and pretend everything was fine? She was getting louder now, her voice rising with each word. How many family dinners did you sit through while texting her? How many times did you look me in the eye and make me feel crazy for questioning where you'd been? Derek tried to approach her, but she held up her hand. Don't. Don't you dare touch me. Don't you dare try to explain or justify or minimize. Just get out. Derek looked around the room as if seeking an ally, but found only stunned faces and averted eyes. Even his own parents looked horrified, his mother dabbing at her eyes with a napkin while his father stared at the table. The Hastings family reputation, so carefully cultivated over generations, was crumbling in real time. Fine, Derek said, trying to reclaim some dignity. But we will discuss this, Vanessa. We have children to think about. We have 3 children to think about, she corrected him. You clearly haven't been thinking about them for the past 2 years. Now get out before I have you physically removed. Derek grabbed his coat from the front closet and left without another word, the door closing behind him with a decisive click. The silence in his wake was profound. Vanessa stood in the middle of her perfect dining room, surrounded by her perfect decorations and her perfect meal, and everything was shattered. My mother finally found her voice. Claire, how could you do this? How could you destroy your sister's marriage? I didn't destroy anything, Mom. Derek destroyed his own marriage. I just made sure Vanessa knew the truth instead of continuing to live a lie while insulting my family. But to bring it out like this, at Christmas, in front of everyone, my mother continued, her voice shaking. It's cruel. It's vindictive. What's cruel is letting her keep attacking me and James while her own marriage is built on lies. What's vindictive is allowing her children to grow up thinking their father is perfect while he's actually betraying their mother. I brought it out like this because Vanessa needed to see it, needed to understand it, needed to stop using her fake perfect life as ammunition against mine. My father stood, his face still flushed with anger. This is family business. You had no right to involve outsiders, to hire investigators, to air our private matters. These aren't our private matters, Dad. This is Vanessa's private matter, and I've given her the information she needs to make informed decisions about her life. That's more than any of you have ever done for me. You've all spent years telling me my marriage was a mistake, that James wasn't good enough, that I should give up and move on. But you never once questioned Vanessa's perfect marriage, never once looked beneath the surface to see if everything was really as ideal as it appeared. I looked around at all of them, at this family that had made me feel inadequate my entire life. You all chose Vanessa's version of success over mine. You valued Derek's money and status over James's character and heart. You taught me that appearances mattered more than substance, that social standing was more important than genuine love. Well, congratulations. Your golden couple just imploded, and my supposedly failed marriage is stronger than ever because it's built on truth instead of performance. Margaret touched my arm gently. Claire, we should probably go. You've done what you came to do. She was right. Staying would just lead to more circular arguments, more accusations, more pain. I walked to the sunroom where Lily was sitting quietly with her cousins, all of them confused and frightened by the adult chaos they could hear but not fully understand. Come on, sweetheart, I said, holding out my hand. We're going home. Lily took my hand without question, trusting me to navigate whatever was happening. As we passed back through the dining room, I paused next to Vanessa. The divorce papers are preliminary, I told her. Margaret's card is in the folder. Call her if you want help, or find your own attorney. Either way, protect yourself and protect those kids. Document everything. Don't let him manipulate you into thinking you're overreacting or that you should forgive and forget. You deserve better than what he gave you. Vanessa looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. I don't understand you. I've been terrible to you for years, and you're helping me. Why? Because I know what it's like to have everyone question your choices and undermine your worth, I said softly. Because I know what it's like to fight to hold your family together against outside pressure. Because despite everything, I don't want to see you destroyed. I just want you to stop trying to destroy me. We left through the front door, stepping out into the cold December night. Snow was falling heavier now, blanketing Vanessa's perfectly manicured lawn in white. Margaret walked us to my car, parked at the curb behind her own sedan. You did well in there, she said. I know that couldn't have been easy. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, I admitted. But also the most necessary. She nodded. For what it's worth, I think you gave your sister a gift tonight, even if she can't see it yet. The truth is always better than a beautiful lie. As she drove away, I got Lily settled in her car seat and then sat in the driver's seat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, trying to process everything that had just happened. My phone was already buzzing with text messages, probably family members wanting to yell at me or demand explanations. I turned it off. Mama? Lily's small voice came from the back seat. Are you okay? I twisted to look at her, this beautiful child who deserved to grow up knowing her worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval. I'm okay, baby. I'm better than okay, actually. What Aunt Vanessa said about Daddy, Lily continued, her voice wavering. She said he's not a real father. But he is, isn't he? He's the realest father there is. He reads to me every night and helps with my homework and makes me laugh. He's real. My heart broke and healed simultaneously. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Your daddy is as real as they come. Aunt Vanessa was wrong to say that, and she was hurting people with her words. Sometimes grown-ups say things they shouldn't, especially when they're unhappy with their own lives. But that doesn't make those things true. Is that why you had that lady come to dinner? Because Aunt Vanessa was being mean? Partially. But also because Aunt Vanessa needed to know some important information about her own life, and I wanted to help her even though we don't always get along. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing. Are we going home to Daddy now? Yes, we are. And I bet he's got hot chocolate waiting for us. I started the car and pulled away from the curb, leaving my sister's perfect house and its newly exposed imperfections behind. The drive home through the snowy streets gave me time to think about what had just transpired, about the bridge I'd probably burned with my family, about the consequences that would ripple out from tonight. But I also thought about James waiting at home, probably anxious about how the dinner had gone, ready to comfort me if things had gone badly. I thought about our small house in Selwood that might not be in the West Hills but was filled with genuine love and laughter. I thought about the life we'd built together despite the obstacles, despite the judgments, despite the accident that had changed everything and somehow made us stronger. When we pulled into our driveway, the porch light was on and I could see the glow of the Christmas tree through the front window. It was a real tree, a little crooked, decorated with ornaments Lily had made in school and family photos in cheap frames. It wasn't magazine-worthy, but it was ours. James opened the door before we even got up the walkway, his face anxious. I could see the question in his eyes, the worry about what my family might have said or done this time. Lily ran to him immediately, launching herself into his arms. Daddy. Mama stood up to Aunt Vanessa. It was like a movie. James caught her easily, his eyes meeting mine over her head. Are you okay? He asked quietly. I nodded, suddenly exhausted but also strangely energized. I'm good. Really good, actually. Can we talk after Lily's in bed? Of course. He studied my face for another moment, then seemed satisfied that I was indeed okay. Hot chocolate is ready in the kitchen. I made the fancy kind with the real cocoa and the tiny marshmallows. You're the best, I told him, and meant it with every fiber of my being. We went inside together, the three of us, and I felt the warmth of home wrap around me like a blanket. This was real. This was what mattered. Not my mother's country club opinions or my father's disappointment or Vanessa's cruel comparisons. This small house with its second-hand furniture and its lopsided Christmas tree, this man who loved me despite his challenges and mine, this child who saw the truth beneath the surface noise. After Lily was tucked into bed, her head full of sugar and excitement from the evening's drama, James and I sat on the couch together. I told him everything, watching his expression shift from shock to anger to something like awe. You hired an investigator? You showed up with a lawyer? You confronted your entire family? When you commit to something, you really commit, Claire. I couldn't let it continue, I said. I couldn't let Lily keep hearing those things about you, about us. And I couldn't watch Vanessa destroy herself with her own arrogance while she was attacking our family. Someone needed to give her the truth. James was quiet for a long moment, his hand finding mine. You know your family is going to be furious. They're probably going to blame you for breaking up Vanessa's marriage. They already are. My phone's been blowing up since we left. I turned it off. He squeezed my hand. Are you going to be okay with that? With being the villain in their story? I've been the villain in their story my whole life, just for different reasons. At least now I'm the villain who stood up for herself and her family. At least now I'm the villain who told the truth instead of maintaining a comfortable lie. Besides, I said, leaning into him. I've got you and Lily. That's all the family I really need. We sat like that for a while, the Christmas tree lights twinkling in the corner, the house quiet and peaceful around us. My phone, still turned off in my purse, probably held dozens of messages ranging from supportive to scathing. My mother was likely planning how to spin this to her bridge club friends. My father was probably consulting with family attorneys about damage control. And Vanessa was facing the collapse of everything she'd built her identity on, every perfect image she'd carefully cultivated. But none of that was my responsibility anymore. I'd spent too many years trying to manage my family's emotions, trying to be small enough not to threaten Vanessa's position as the successful daughter, trying to prove my worth using metrics that didn't value what actually mattered. Tonight, I'd chosen myself. I'd chosen my husband and my daughter and the truth over comfortable lies and surface harmony. The fallout would be significant, but the freedom was worth it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing for anyone's approval. I was simply standing in my truth, messy and complicated and real as it was. The aftermath of that Christmas dinner unfolded over the following weeks in ways both expected and surprising. My mother called exactly once, 3 days after the incident, her voice tight with controlled anger. She informed me that I had humiliated the family, that my actions were unforgivable, and that I should not expect to be welcome at future gatherings until I apologized to Vanessa and the entire family for my behavior. I listened quietly, then told her that I wouldn't be apologizing for telling the truth, and that if standing up for my family meant losing my place at her table, I could accept that cost. She hung up without saying goodbye. My father sent a formal email, the kind he might send to a business associate who had disappointed him. It outlined his concerns about my judgment, my methods, and my apparent disregard for family unity. He suggested I seek counseling to address what he termed my vindictive tendencies and inability to maintain appropriate boundaries. I deleted it without responding. Some conversations simply weren't worth having. But Vanessa's response was the one that truly mattered, and it came in unexpected form. 2 weeks after Christmas, she appeared on my doorstep unannounced on a gray January afternoon. I almost didn't recognize her at first. Gone was the perfectly styled hair and designer outfit. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her face free of makeup, her eyes still carrying shadows of sleepless nights. Can we talk? She asked quietly, and I stepped aside to let her in. James was at work and Lily at school, so the house was empty and silent around us. We sat in my living room, the same room Vanessa had once commented was charming in that way that made charming sound like a synonym for inadequate. Now she looked around as if seeing it for the first time, taking in the family photos on the walls, the toys organized in baskets, the lived-in comfort of a home built on love rather than image. I filed for divorce, she said without preamble. Used the papers your lawyer prepared as a starting point, then hired my own attorney. Derek's trying to fight it, claiming the affair meant nothing and that we should go to counseling. But I'm done. I can't unknow what I know now, and I can't forgive what he did. I nodded, unsure what she needed from me. How are the kids handling it? They're confused and sad, as expected. But I'm being honest with them in age-appropriate ways. I'm not lying to protect Derek's image anymore. They deserve to know that sometimes adults make mistakes, and that those mistakes have consequences. She twisted her wedding ring, still on her finger but clearly loosened. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past 2 weeks. About my marriage, about my life, about how I've treated you all these years. You don't have to do this, I started, but she held up her hand. Yes, I do. I need to say this. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I've been jealous of you for years, Claire. Jealous in a way that made me mean and petty and cruel. You confused me. I was jealous of you. Vanessa, you had everything. The perfect husband, the perfect house, the perfect life. She laughed bitterly. I had the performance of a perfect life. You had something real. You married someone you genuinely loved, someone who made you happy, someone who showed up for you in meaningful ways. When Mom and Dad disapproved, you married him anyway. When life got hard after his accident, you stayed and fought for your marriage. You built something authentic while I was building something hollow. I sat back, genuinely stunned. I never knew you felt that way. How could I have? You spent years making me feel inadequate. Because that's what people do when they're insecure about their own choices. I made you small so I could feel big. I attacked your marriage because mine felt empty even before I knew about the affair. Derek and I, we looked perfect together, but we barely knew each other. Our relationship was always more about what it looked like from the outside than what it felt like on the inside. She wiped at her eyes, smearing away tears. The night of Christmas dinner, when you exposed Derek's affair in front of everyone, I wanted to hate you. Part of me did hate you. But a bigger part of me was grateful. You gave me permission to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop defending something that wasn't worth defending. I've been going to therapy, she continued. Dealing with the divorce, but also dealing with why I stayed in such an empty marriage for so long, why I needed everyone to think my life was perfect, why I was so threatened by your happiness. And I realized that I'd been living for Mom and Dad's approval my entire life, just like you were until you decided to stop. I'm 32 years old and I'm just now figuring out who I am beyond their expectations. Better late than never, I said gently. She met my eyes directly for the first time. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry for the cruel things I said about James, about your marriage, about your life. I'm sorry for making Lily feel bad about her father. I'm sorry for years of subtle digs and overt insults. I'm sorry for being the kind of sister who tore you down instead of building you up. You deserved so much better from me. The apology settled between us, genuine and raw. I'd waited years to hear something like it, had imagined various versions of this conversation. But now that it was happening, I found I didn't need it as much as I thought I would. I'd already done the work of healing, of building my self-worth independent of her validation. Still, it mattered. It meant something that she could finally see the truth and own her part in our broken relationship. I accept your apology, I said. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry too. Sorry for the dramatic way I revealed Derek's affair, sorry for doing it in front of the whole family. I could have handled it differently, told you privately. But I was so angry, so tired of being attacked, and I wanted to make a point. She shook her head. Don't apologize for that. You were right to do it the way you did. If you'd told me privately, I probably would have made excuses for Derek, would have convinced myself it wasn't that bad, would have kept up the perfect family facade. Doing it publicly, with witnesses and evidence, meant I couldn't hide from the truth. It was the wake-up call I needed even if I didn't want it. We talked for another hour, honest conversation replacing years of performance and pretense. She asked about James, really asked, wanting to know about his recovery and his work and how we made our marriage function. I asked about her plans, about what came next for her and the children. She was thinking about going back to school, maybe pursuing the interior design career she'd abandoned when she married Derek. She was selling the house in West Hills, finding something smaller and more manageable. She was rebuilding her life from the ground up, and for the first time, she seemed excited rather than terrified about the unknown. Before she left, she paused at the door. "Do you think we could try again? Being sisters, I mean. Really being sisters instead of competitors?" "I'd like that," I said honestly. "It won't be easy. We've got years of patterns to unlearn. But I'd like to try." She hugged me then, a real hug that felt nothing like the performative embraces at family gatherings. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." Lily came home from school to find me sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, processing everything. She climbed up next to me, tucking herself under my arm in that way she had of knowing when I needed comfort. "Did something bad happen, Mama?" "No, sweetheart. Something good, actually. Something really good." Aunt Vanessa came by and we talked, really talked, for the first time in years. "Will we see her again?" "I think so. I think we're going to try to be a real family instead of just pretending." That night, when James came home and I told him about Vanessa's visit, he pulled me close and kissed the top of my head. "I'm proud of you. For standing up for us, for being willing to forgive, for showing Lily what it looks like to have boundaries and compassion at the same time. You're stronger than you know." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I just finally realized that my worth doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion. That my family, this family right here, is enough." Spring came, bringing with it new growth and unexpected changes. Vanessa's divorce was finalized, and she moved into a townhouse not far from us. The kids adjusted to their new reality with the resilience children have when given honesty and stability. My relationship with my parents remained strained, cordial but distant, and I found I could live with that. Not every relationship needed to be close to be acceptable. But Vanessa and I built something new, something better than what we'd had before. We had Sunday dinners together, our kids playing while we talked about real things instead of performing perfection. We supported each other through challenges, celebrated each other's victories, and slowly learned what it meant to be genuine sisters. It wasn't the family I'd grown up with, but it was the family I was choosing now, and that made all the difference. The aftermath of that Christmas dinner unfolded over the following weeks in ways both expected and surprising. My mother called exactly once, 3 days after the incident, her voice tight with controlled anger. She informed me that I had humiliated the family, that my actions were unforgivable, and that I should not expect to be welcome at future gatherings until I apologized to Vanessa and the entire family for my behavior. I listened quietly, then told her that I wouldn't be apologizing for telling the truth, and that if standing up for my family meant losing my place at her table, I could accept that cost. She hung up without saying goodbye. My father sent a formal email, the kind he might send to a business associate who had disappointed him. It outlined his concerns about my judgment, my methods, and my apparent disregard for family unity. He suggested I seek counseling to address what he termed my vindictive tendencies and inability to maintain appropriate boundaries. I deleted it without responding. Some conversations simply weren't worth having. The extended family split into factions. Some relatives reached out privately to express support, admitting they'd always felt something was off about Derek but hadn't wanted to interfere. Others circled the wagons around the idea of family privacy, treating my revelation as a greater sin than Derek's betrayal. My cousin Jennifer sent a long text saying she wished she had my courage, that she'd spent years watching her own husband's suspicious behavior but was too afraid to confront it. My uncle Paul stopped speaking to me entirely, apparently valuing social harmony over truth. The silence from my parents hurt more than I expected, even though I'd prepared myself for it. There's something uniquely painful about choosing your own well-being over their approval, about finally setting boundaries with people who raised you to believe boundaries were selfish. I found myself grieving not just the relationship we had, but the relationship I'd always hoped we might have if I could just be good enough, successful enough, compliant enough. James noticed my quiet sadness during those first weeks of January. One evening after Lily was asleep, he found me sitting in our bedroom, staring at old family photos from childhood. "You're second-guessing yourself," he observed, settling beside me on the bed. I shook my head, then reconsidered. "Not second-guessing exactly. Just processing. It's strange to realize that standing up for yourself can feel like loss even when you know it was necessary." He took my hand, his grip steady and warm. "You didn't lose anything real, Claire. You lost the performance, the pretense. But you never had their genuine support or understanding to begin with. What you lost was the hope that things might change on their own, and that's always painful even when it needed to happen." "I know. And I don't regret what I did. I just wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish my family had been capable of seeing me, of valuing what I built with you, of respecting my choices without needing a crisis to force their eyes open." James was quiet for a moment, then said something that shifted my perspective entirely. "You know what I think? I think you've been grieving this loss your whole adult life. You've been mourning the family you deserved but never had. What happened at Christmas just made it official, put a name to something you felt for years. And now you get to do something you've never done before. You get to stop hoping they'll change and start building the family you actually want." His words unlocked something in me, a recognition that my sadness wasn't really about the confrontation or its aftermath. It was about finally accepting a truth I'd been avoiding for decades. My parents and I had fundamental incompatibilities in values, in what we believed mattered, in how we defined success and love and family. I'd spent my entire life trying to bridge that gap, to translate myself into their language, to prove my worth using their metrics. But the gap was unbridgeable because it was based on fundamentally different worldviews. I started writing in a journal that week, something my therapist had suggested years ago that I'd never committed to. The pages filled with memories, patterns, realizations. I wrote about being 8 years old and overhearing my mother tell a friend that I was the plain one, not like Vanessa who would surely be beautiful. I wrote about high school graduations and college acceptances, achievements that were met with lukewarm responses because they weren't exceptional enough, weren't Ivy League enough, weren't worth bragging about at the country club. I wrote about introducing James to my family, watching them assess him like a stock they might invest in, seeing the dismissal in their eyes when they learned he was a firefighter rather than a doctor or lawyer. I wrote about the accident, about calling my mother from the hospital and hearing her say that perhaps this was a sign, that maybe I should reconsider my marriage while I still could, that no one would blame me for leaving. The journal became a repository for all the small cuts and large wounds that I'd minimized over the years, telling myself I was being too sensitive, too demanding, too ungrateful. But writing it all down, seeing the pattern laid out across pages and pages of my life, I realized I hadn't been any of those things. I'd been a person seeking basic respect and love from people who were fundamentally incapable of providing it in the way I needed. That wasn't a failure on my part. It was simply a painful reality. And acknowledging it, really accepting it, allowed me to start letting go of the hope that had kept me tethered to their approval for so long. But Vanessa's response was the one that truly mattered, and it came in unexpected form. 2 weeks after Christmas, she appeared on my doorstep unannounced on a gray January afternoon. I almost didn't recognize her at first. Gone was the perfectly styled hair and designer outfit. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her face free of makeup, her eyes still carrying shadows of sleepless nights. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, and I stepped aside to let her in. James was at work and Lily at school, so the house was empty and silent around us. We sat in my living room, the same room Vanessa had once commented was charming in that way that made charming sound like a synonym for inadequate. Now she looked around as if seeing it for the first time, taking in the family photos on the walls, the toys organized in baskets, the lived-in comfort of a home built on love rather than image. "I filed for divorce," she said without preamble. Used the papers your lawyer prepared as a starting point, then hired my own attorney. Derek's trying to fight it, claiming the affair meant nothing and that we should go to counseling. But I'm done. I can't unknow what I know now, and I can't forgive what he did. I nodded, unsure what she needed from me. How are the kids handling it? They're confused and sad, as expected. But I'm being honest with them in age-appropriate ways. I'm not lying to protect Derek's image anymore. They deserve to know that sometimes adults make mistakes, and that those mistakes have consequences. She twisted her wedding ring, still on her finger but clearly loosened. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past 2 weeks. About my marriage, about my life, about how I've treated you all these years. You don't have to do this, I started, but she held up her hand. Yes, I do. I need to say this. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I've been jealous of you for years, Claire. Jealous in a way that made me mean and petty and cruel. You confused me. I was jealous of you. Vanessa, you had everything. The perfect husband, the perfect house, the perfect life. She laughed bitterly. I had the performance of a perfect life. You had something real. You married someone you genuinely loved, someone who made you happy, someone who showed up for you in meaningful ways. When Mom and Dad disapproved, you married him anyway. When life got hard after his accident, you stayed and fought for your marriage. You built something authentic while I was building something hollow. I sat back, genuinely stunned. I never knew you felt that way. How could I have? You spent years making me feel inadequate. Because that's what people do when they're insecure about their own choices. I made you small so I could feel big. I attacked your marriage because mine felt empty even before I knew about the affair. Derek and I, we looked perfect together, but we barely knew each other. Our relationship was always more about what it looked like from the outside than what it felt like on the inside. She wiped at her eyes, smearing away tears. The night of Christmas dinner, when you exposed Derek's affair in front of everyone, I wanted to hate you. Part of me did hate you. But a bigger part of me was grateful. You gave me permission to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop defending something that wasn't worth defending. I've been going to therapy, she continued. Dealing with the divorce, but also dealing with why I stayed in such an empty marriage for so long, why I needed everyone to think my life was perfect, why I was so threatened by your happiness. And I realized that I've been living for Mom and Dad's approval my entire life, just like you were until you decided to stop. I'm 32 years old and I'm just now figuring out who I am beyond their expectations. Better late than never, I said gently. She met my eyes directly for the first time. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry for the cruel things I said about James, about your marriage, about your life. I'm sorry for making Lily feel bad about her father. I'm sorry for years of subtle digs and overt insults. I'm sorry for being the kind of sister who tore you down instead of building you up. You deserved so much better from me. The apology settled between us, genuine and raw. I'd waited years to hear something like it, had imagined various versions of this conversation. But now that it was happening, I found I didn't need it as much as I thought I would. I'd already done the work of healing, of building my self-worth independent of her validation. Still, it mattered. It meant something that she could finally see the truth and own her part in our broken relationship. I accept your apology, I said. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry too. Sorry for the dramatic way I revealed Derek's affair, sorry for doing it in front of the whole family. I could have handled it differently, told you privately. But I was so angry, so tired of being attacked, and I wanted to make a point. She shook her head. Don't apologize for that. You were right to do it the way you did. If you'd told me privately, I probably would have made excuses for Derek, would have convinced myself it wasn't that bad, would have kept up the perfect family facade. Doing it publicly, with witnesses and evidence, meant I couldn't hide from the truth. It was the wake-up call I needed even if I didn't want it. We talked for another hour, honest conversation replacing years of performance and pretense. She asked about James, really asked, wanting to know about his recovery and his work and how we made our marriage function. I told her about the challenges, about the days when his cognitive issues made simple tasks frustrating, about the financial stress of medical bills and reduced income, about the grief of watching someone you love struggle with limitations they never expected to face. But I also told her about the unexpected gifts that came from those challenges. How adversity had stripped away everything superficial in our relationship, leaving only what was essential and true. How James's vulnerability had taught me about real strength, the kind that admits weakness and asks for help. How our difficulties had created a depth of intimacy and partnership that I'm not sure we would have found otherwise. How choosing to stay, to fight, to build something meaningful despite the obstacles had given me a sense of purpose and pride that no external achievement could match. Vanessa listened with tears streaming down her face. I never knew any of that. I never asked. I just assumed your life was hard and mine was easy, and I used that assumption to feel superior. But the truth is, you've been living with intention and courage while I've been sleepwalking through a performance. She paused, then added quietly. I want to learn how to do what you do. How to choose authenticity over approval. How to build something real instead of something that just looks good. It's not easy, I warned her. It means disappointing people, setting boundaries, accepting that some relationships might not survive your honesty. It means choosing your own values over inherited expectations, even when that choice comes with real costs. But it also means sleeping peacefully at night because you're not maintaining exhausting facades. It means relationships built on genuine connection rather than performance. It means teaching your children, by example, that their worth isn't contingent on anyone else's approval. Before she left, she paused at the door. Do you think we could try again? Being sisters, I mean. Really being sisters instead of competitors? I'd like that, I said honestly. It won't be easy. We've got years of patterns to unlearn. But I'd like to try. She hugged me then, a real hug that felt nothing like the performative embraces at family gatherings. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. Lily came home from school to find me sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, processing everything. She climbed up next to me, tucking herself under my arm in that way she had of knowing when I needed comfort. Did something bad happen, Mama? No, sweetheart. Something good, actually. Something really good. Aunt Vanessa came by and we talked, really talked, for the first time in years. Will we see her again? I think so. I think we're going to try to be a real family instead of just pretending. That night, when James came home and I told him about Vanessa's visit, he pulled me close and kissed the top of my head. I'm proud of you. For standing up for us, for being willing to forgive, for showing Lily what it looks like to have boundaries and compassion at the same time. You're stronger than you know. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just finally realized that my worth doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion. That my family, this family right here, is enough. Spring came, bringing with it new growth and unexpected changes. Vanessa's divorce was finalized, and she moved into a townhouse not far from us. The kids adjusted to their new reality with the resilience children have when given honesty and stability. My relationship with my parents remained strained, cordial but distant, and I found I could live with that. Not every relationship needed to be close to be acceptable. But Vanessa and I built something new, something better than what we'd had before. We had Sunday dinners together, our kids playing while we talked about real things instead of performing perfection. We supported each other through challenges, celebrated each other's victories, and slowly learned what it meant to be genuine sisters. She started her interior design business, working with clients who wanted homes that reflected their actual lives rather than magazine ideals. I watched her blossom into someone I genuinely liked and respected, not just someone I was related to by blood. One Sunday in May, as we sat on my back porch watching our kids play in the yard, Vanessa said something that captured the transformation we'd both undergone. You know what's wild? For years I thought I had everything and you had nothing. Now I realize you always had what actually mattered, and I was too busy performing to notice. I'm grateful you forced me to see the truth, even though it hurt like hell at the time. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We're both building something better now. That's what matters. She nodded, watching her children laugh with Lily over some shared joke. Yeah. Something real instead of something pretty. Turns out real is better, even when it's messy. Looking back on that Christmas dinner, on the moment I decided to stop accepting mistreatment and start demanding respect, I realized it wasn't just about exposing Derek's affair or defending James or teaching my family a lesson. It was about finally valuing myself enough to stop participating in my own diminishment. It was about showing Lily, through my actions, that love without respect isn't really love, that family shouldn't require you to make yourself small, that authenticity matters more than approval. The cost was real. I lost the fantasy of the family I'd always hoped for, the one where my parents eventually saw my worth and my choices were finally validated. But what I gained was so much greater. I gained genuine self-respect, a deeper relationship with my husband built on mutual appreciation rather than external validation, a sister who became a real friend instead of a competitor, and the peace that comes from living in alignment with your values. It wasn't the family I was born into, but it was the family I was choosing now, and that made all the difference. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept less than you deserve, even when that refusal costs you relationships you've spent a lifetime trying to preserve. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the most generous thing you can do, not just for yourself but for everyone trapped in the same patterns of pretense and performance. As I watched my daughter play in the spring sunshine, secure in the knowledge that both her parents loved her, surrounded by family who chose authenticity over appearances, I felt something I'd never quite felt before. Complete peace with my choices, my life, my family. Not perfect, not polished, not worthy of my mother's country club bragging. But real, and true, and wholly mine. And that was more than enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.